It was dark in the cave, and I could hear Saul's voice echoing in the distance. His anger was like a storm, tearing through the air. I knew, without a doubt, he was coming to kill David. I had seen it in his eyes 100 times before. This wasn't just about power or the throne. It was personal, and Saul would stop at nothing to destroy him. I'll never forget the first time I saw Saul's jealousy burn. I was a servant in Saul's palace, just a nobody in the background, watching things unfold. Everything was fine at first. Saul was a king, and David was just a shepherd boy. But that all changed the day David killed Goliath. The people of Israel went wild, cheering for David, singing his praises. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his 10,000. They sang, and it hit Saul like a knife in his gut. I was standing nearby when I saw his face turn dark, the way his eyes tightened with rage. I thought for a second he might explode right there. He didn't say anything, but I could see it. His jealousy was growing. That day, things started changing between them. Saul wasn't the same. His kindness toward David began to fade, replaced by cold looks and strange, sudden outbursts. It was as if the throne wasn't enough for him anymore. He had to be the only one, the greatest one. And David, the young man everyone loved, was a threat. Soon, David became part of Saul's army. He fought for Israel, won battles, and gained even more love from the people. But the more David succeeded, the more Saul's jealousy twisted inside him. The whispers in Saul's court were loud, but they were just a part of it. I could see the deepening darkness in Saul's heart every time David's name came up. The king's eyes would narrow, and I could feel the tension rise. Then came that terrible night. Saul had invited David to dinner, and everyone was there, waiting. But David, knowing Saul wanted to kill him, didn't show up. So Saul turned to his son Jonathan, his eyes burning. "Where is David?" Saul demanded, his voice sharp, his face twisted in anger. Jonathan tried to explain. "He's with his family, celebrating a festival. It's important." But Saul wasn't listening. His rage exploded. "Why should I care about David? As long as he lives, you'll never be king. Don't you get it, Jonathan? He's a threat to everything we have." I remember Jonathan's face, filled with confusion and pain. He loved his father, but he couldn't turn against David. The tension in the room was thick. Saul wasn't just angry, he was crazy with jealousy. Saul's eyes went cold. "You son of a rebellious woman, you're taking his side." He reached for a spear and threw it, just missing Jonathan. I could see the anger in Saul's face, and it scared me to my bones. Jonathan left the table, heartbroken. The king's madness had taken over completely. And that's when it really started. The hunt. David had to run. Saul had declared war on him, even though David had done nothing wrong. I remember the day David left. His eyes were sad, but there was a kind of determination in them too. He knew he couldn't stay. Saul had lost his mind, and David had become the target of all his hatred. David didn't have a choice. Saul sent his soldiers after him, everywhere. They searched the hills, the caves, the towns. I couldn't understand how someone so powerful could fall so far. But Saul was obsessed. He was driven by a need to destroy David. And the more Saul hunted him, the more his soul seemed to wither away. One of the most terrifying moments came when David and his men were hiding in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul's army was close behind. Saul had no idea David was near, but David's men saw him coming. It was like a nightmare, the way Saul led his army through the rocks and the trees, searching for David. We were all so quiet, so still. David had no choice but to hide deeper in the cave, hoping Saul wouldn't find him. But he did. Saul entered the very cave where David was hiding. I remember the tension in the air, the way we all held our breath. Saul didn't see David at first. He walked right past him, too tired to notice. His soldiers were with him, but none of them saw him. David's men whispered to him, "This is it. This is your chance. God has delivered him into your hands. Kill him, David. Take the throne." But David didn't. Instead, he crept up and cut off a piece of Saul's cloak. Saul was still unaware of the man he was hunting just feet away. When Saul left the cave, David stepped out into the light. "Saul," David called, his voice steady but filled with grief. "I could have killed you, but I didn't. Why are you hunting me?" Saul stopped, turning slowly, his face pale, full of disbelief. He saw the piece of his cloak in David's hand. His heart sank. He knew David had spared him. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw something break inside Saul. It was like he realized he had gone too far. He cried, "David, you are more righteous than I am. You've treated me well, but I've treated you badly." But I knew it wouldn't last. Saul's heart was too hard, too twisted. The next time David turned his back, Saul came again, hunting him like an animal. The final time came when Saul led an army to track David down again, to kill him once and for all. I remember hearing Saul's voice booming through the hills, ordering his men to search. David had to flee again, and I was with him. David and his men hid in a stronghold, but Saul was relentless. His men found out where they were, and Saul came close, bringing his entire army. As we crouched in the shadows, I could hear the soldiers' heavy steps growing louder, closer. I thought we were done for, but it was then that something strange happened. Just as Saul was about to take the final step toward David's hiding place, a messenger came, shouting out that the Philistines were attacking Israel. Saul had to leave, and just like that, he turned away, abandoning his hunt for David to deal with his kingdom's enemies. David had one last chance to show Saul that he wasn't his enemy. He confronted him once more, showing him that he could have killed him, but didn't. Saul wept again, but this time it was different. He knew the end was near. His jealousy, his rage, his cruelty had destroyed him from the inside, and it wouldn't be long before he would lose everything. When I think back to those days, I'm still haunted by Saul's madness. It wasn't just the anger or the jealousy that scared me. It was the way it completely consumed him. The power he once had slipped through his fingers like sand, and in the end, there was nothing left of the man he used to be, only the wreckage of his soul. And David, though he spared Saul every time, was always running, always hiding. And in the end, it wasn't even Saul who killed him. It was the death of his own soul, torn apart by the darkness inside. It was a kingdom lost to madness, a king lost to hatred, and a man who could not escape the consequences of his own wickedness. Stay tuned for more of David, King Saul, and other Bible stories by subscribing to this channel. Thank you